Hi, and welcome to this live reading from Kiss of the Swan by Natalia Reis, and this is presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Chapter 1, Prologue. The baby's wail was heard across the land, and everyone knew this was not to be a normal child. The king and queen of Nem had been childless for many years. A battalion of women was enlisted for the king to impregnate, but no baby was ever begotten. This was, of course, not public knowledge, for the king prided himself of his male prowess, and to admit to his court and subjects that his seed was not strong enough to bear fruit would have been an embarrassment. So he continued to bed every eligible female in town, beheading them afterward when they didn't yield a pregnancy. One day, a woman who claimed to be a powerful witch stormed into the palace, demanding an audience with the king. This was unheard of, since all the witches had been exterminated years ago. "Tell her to leave," King Ryan had said, his face still buried between the breasts of his latest concubine. "I'm busy." The little eunuch who served the king with the utmost discretion delivered the royal message and came back with another one. "She says she won't leave, your majesty," the man said, his gaze on the floor. "She told me to let you know she can guarantee you a royal heir." That caught the king's attention. "Who is she?" he asked, dropping his lover on the pillow and swinging his legs over the edge of the bed to move into a sitting position. The eunuch peeked at the almost unconscious concubine lying naked on the white linen and wondered what kind of drug the monarch had used on her this time. "Her name is Docric, and she says she has powerful magic." Naked as the day he was born, the king stood up. "Bring me some robes," he ordered, pointing at some discarded clothes on a chair. "I will grant her a conference. If she is lying, I will chop her to pieces." Docric was indeed a witch, who, after bedding the wicked king, quickly became pregnant, much to the monarch's delight. The crown was finally going to have an heir. Unexpectedly, the witch forbade any visits from the royals throughout her pregnancy, a fact that didn't bother the king in the least, less to worry about. When it was time to give birth, she merely called a midwife and delivered the infant in the privacy of her quarters. Soon afterward, Docric had the baby delivered directly to his father by a wet nurse, with instructions that the witch must be invited to the boy's naming ceremony and given the highest noble title in the land. King Ryan had no intentions of doing what she requested. "Tell the guards to capture Docric when she comes to the festivities," he told the eunuch. He would swiftly behead her like he had all the other women, and never have to spare her another thought. On the day of the naming, anyone was invited except for Docric. Soldiers flooded the streets and every inch of the palace looking out for the witch, but she couldn't be found. In a room packed with noblemen and foreign dignitaries, King Ryan haughtily raised his child above his head and presented the infant boy to the court. "This is my royal heir, Prince Ryoga, who will take my throne someday," he announced to the crowd. A murmur of voices ran through the crowd like a wave. Many had thought this day would never come. Men and women alike gaped in wonder and relief at their king. There wasn't a single family in the kingdom who didn't fear their daughters would have been taken to the palace to never return. Now that the monarch had an heir, maybe they could finally sleep in peace. The baby had just been returned to his cot when the wild wind blew the doors open, and every hat, every headdress in the room flew up in the air. Before the king had the time to call the soldiers, the doors slammed shut, and Docric materialized in the center of the room, magnificent in a dress that seemed as if made of a star-studded midnight sky. "How dare you come in uninvited?" Despite the arrogance in his voice, the king had paled at the sight of the child's mother. The witch laughed and stepped closer to the baby's crib. "I came to offer my gift, your majesty," she said with a slight bow of the head. "After all, there is a special place in my heart for this child." The eunuch snorted into his sleeve, and the king threw him a look that could melt diamonds. "Stop her, you fool!" he hissed between his teeth. The eunuch shrugged. How could such a little man like him stop a mighty witch? Docric reached the side of the bassinet and leaned over the baby with a predatory smile. "How adorable Mahad is," she said with a coo. "His name is Ryoga," the monarch protested in a shaky voice, not daring to take a step forward. She laughed again. "No, it is not. The witch punctuated her words with a dismissive gesture of her hand. "This baby is cursed, so his name will be Mayarach." The eunuch watched as King Ryan swallowed, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down in his mighty neck. "What do you mean he's cursed?" "Well, technically he's not, yet." Dockrick circled the crib like a vulture over carrion. "But he will be when the time comes." Her soft, almost tender tone was more frightening than anything else. From the doors, a racket arose, soldiers trying to get inside. She cackled, this time throwing her head back. "Oh dear, I must have sealed the doors. Well, they can come in after I'm finished." The king took a few steps backward. "What are you going to do, kill my son?" The woman clicked her tongue and shook her head. "Of course not. Why would I do such a thing? No, I want you to watch him grow into a toddler, and then a boy, and a man. I want you to love him, and dream of what he will one day be, your one and only child." The eunuch scratched his nose. The conversation was not going where he'd thought it would. "Then, when you love him fiercely," she closed her fist in the air as if catching a fly, "then I will take him away from you. But don't worry, I won't kill him." All color had gone from the king's already pale face, but he didn't have enough courage to try and stop the witch. He looked at the eunuch again as if he could do anything. "I'm sorry I didn't invite you, my dear Dockrick," Ryan said, his lips shaking. "That's because I was going to invite you for a much bigger celebration later this week." Dockrick tilted her head to the side. "Oh, that's sweet of you," she cooed, a saccharine smile on her lips. "Unfortunately, it's too late now. Your sweet boy, well, not so sweet as you'll find out soon enough, will come to me when he turns 18, and I will grant him eternal sleep. And because I hate to think of my child alone in the world of dreams and nightmares, I will send the whole court, you included, your majesty, with him." Unwisely, the king laughed. "You're crazy. Why would my son seek you out?" "Because, your majesty, I know where he lives, and I made him who he will be. He will come to see me when it's time." She wiggled her fingers a couple of times and vanished. It was then that the child, who had been quiet all along, let out the most awful, blood-curdling wail the kingdom had ever heard. The curse had been cast.